Now, a horrible story out of our nation's capital tonight where Philip Todd, a staffer for Senator and medical Dr. Rand Paul, was brutally attacked on the streets of D.C. Now, the attacker had been out of prison for all of 1 day after serving 12 years behind bars. Now, the assault was so vicious that it left Todd with a knife wound to the head. That required surgery. Thankfully, he is recovering well. Now, of course, Senator Rand Paul is no stranger to violence on the streets of D.C. You might remember back in 2020, he was surrounded by a mob with his family after leaving the RNC convention. Here with more is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Sean.
First, my deepest sympathies and apologies and prayers for your staffer. And I mean that. You gave me some news this afternoon. He is recovering well?
Yeah, Philip's a strong, athletic young man. He's going to recover. He's been through a lot. I mean, he's not completely beyond all of the problems from this attack. It was life-threatening, but he will recover. He's in good spirits. I've talked to him. He's, it's going to take time, but we all are just hoping the best and hoping that he gets better as soon as he can.
You know, we lived through an example here at Fox where our friend and colleague Gianno Caldwell, his little brother was murdered, innocent little brother murdered in Chicago. We see violence all over this country now. This defund, dismantle, no bail law mentality, I would argue, Senator, is extremely dangerous, and innocent people like the person on your staff and Gianno's brother deserve better than what we're giving them.
And I think a lot of us try to talk ourselves into, oh, well, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it was 3 in the morning in a dark alley. This was broad daylight right outside a restaurant. I think they had just picked up their food, and no one would expect something like this to happen. And it makes all of us, as we walk around D.C., look over our shoulders. As we walk around all of our major cities, people are looking this way and that. I mean, the internet's full of, unfortunately, video of attacks happening around our country. And so something's got to change. We've got to do a better job. And it's been my opinion that for some nonviolent crimes, we incarcerate people too long. But for some violent crimes, I think we don't incarcerate people long enough. In fact, I think, the person who did this, I don't think should see the outside of a jail again. It's got a long line of violence, and I think this person needs to be kept from society so no one else is injured. So I really think some of the answer is really separating violent people from the society. And when they show that they can't live peacefully with people, maybe they shouldn't live with us anymore. Maybe they should be kept from everyone.
Senator, I know you're a medical doctor, and recently you confronted the Moderna CEO, Stephanie Bancel, on the risk of myocarditis, especially in young males after taking the vaccine. On issue after issue, on the issue of natural immunity, the origins of COVID, Dr. Fauci lying, you have been proven right time and time and time again. What did you think about the answer from the head of Moderna? Because it sounded to me like they didn't want to answer your question.
It was disappointing, and I think it breeds more distrust in the vaccine industry and more distrust in vaccines generally. Because when he says, oh, I'm not aware of this happening in children, I had talked to the president of the company in my office, of his company, of Moderna, 2 days before this, and he readily agreed with me that, yes, this is an increased incidence among males, teenage males. It's about 28 times what it is in the normal public. And it is higher than anybody who's had COVID. So he just wasn't honest with the public. And the bottom line is people are smarter than you think. If you look at people over 65 in our country, do you know how many people have been vaccinated? It's like 98% of people over 65 because they knew that this was heightened risk for people over a certain age. But under 15, it's like 2% because people are actually smarter than you give them credit for. Moms are seeing this happen and saying, my kid's already had COVID. Isn't there such a thing as natural immunity? Why do I need to give a vaccine to my kid who's already survived this disease?
I want to ask you, because are you 100% confident about the origins of COVID being the Wuhan virology lab? Because I am. Are you 100% confident that NIH money funneled through the EcoHealth Alliance, that meant that we, the taxpayer, helped pay for that virus? Are you 100% confident that Fauci completely lied to the American people about what he knew and when he knew it?
I'm 100% confident that Fauci lied to us and that they were doing dangerous research there. And I would say all of the evidence I've seen so far points towards it coming from a lab. And it all adds together. And proximity makes a difference. The fact that the lab is within walking distance of where most of the coronaviruses in the world, the largest collection of coronaviruses in the world, is within walking distance of where this started. Yeah, it's just too many coincidences to add up. But there's also evidence that this virus, COVID-19, is the product of something that was being developed and experimented upon. The group in Wuhan actually asked our Defense Department for money and said they wanted to take a coronavirus like COVID and put something in it to make it more infectious. It's called a furin cleavage site. It's not found in nature, and that's exactly what COVID turned out to be. So this is a mystery, but it's also a mystery with a cover-up. We've now found that American universities have given money to military research in China. And we are going to get to the bottom of this, but there's a massive cover-up going on, and the lead in all of the cover-up has been Fauci. We now have information that he's still working for government, even though he says he's retired, and it is my belief that he is worried about being indicted, and so he continues to work, so he will get legal protection of the federal government. But this is wrong on every level of it, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. We are sending a letter to find out what the actual status of his employment is. Is he retired? Is he still getting a federal detail? So there's a lot of stuff going on, but at the top of this, at the top of every sort of concern we have, it's Tony Fauci.
How real is the threat of myocarditis, especially in young men?
So it's about 28 times what you would expect for young men. That still makes it fairly rare. We're talking about, I can't give you the exact number per 100,000, but it might be 5 or 10 per 100,000. But you have to weigh that against the risks of the disease. What is the chance that your child will be hospitalized from COVID? What's the chance that your child will be hospitalized or die if they've already had COVID? And you have to weigh the risk and benefit. So that's why I've always said if you're over 65 or over 70, the risk of the disease, at least for the last couple of years, has been much greater than any perceived or any real risk of the vaccine. I believe that. But if you're younger, the risks of the vaccine, even though they're rare, can actually exceed the risks of the disease and in all likelihood do. And I think giving 3 vaccines, we've got universities mandating 3 vaccines. I think that's malpractice because the risk of the myocarditis increases with each vaccine. There's a lot of compromises that could happen here. 1 vaccine, no vaccine if your kid's already had it. But instead, the government says, do as you're told, don't think about this, don't listen to any dissent, just do as you're told. And that's a recipe for bad medicine and really malpractice.
Well said, Senator, Doctor. Paul, we appreciate you being with us. Thank you, sir.